Hello chess.com viewers. Unless you've been living under a pretty sizable rock, you've seen this example. This is from the final match game between Carlsen and Karyakin. If you haven't seen this position before, pause your videos and figure out what Carlsen played here. Well, he played the move Queen to h6 check. A very beautiful move and arguably the most beautiful move to finish a world championship match. The variations are simple. Black can take with the king and we have rook h8 mate, or black can take with the pawn and we have rook takes f7 mate. Despite their simplicity though, even if you're a beginner or a grandmaster, you're going to appreciate these beautiful and aesthetic mating patterns that arise. One might ask, how did Carlsen see this move Queen h6 check with only seconds on his clock? Well, in addition to being incredibly good and talented at chess, Carlsen has probably seen a similar pattern before. I would suspect it's this one. This is from the game Popov versus Novopashin, a famous example in many tactics books. Pause your videos and see if you can find the continuation that Popov played here. Well, the first move is actually quite easy. Knight g6 check is a discovery that picks up the rook on f8. But after h takes g6, rook takes f8 check, king h7, white does need to find the key move here. Otherwise, black's three pieces could cause a lot of trouble for the white king. He has Carlsen's queen h6 check. And again, if king takes h6, we have rook h8 check. And if g takes h6, then we have rook takes b7. Really, the only difference between Carlsen and Karyakin and Popov versus Novopashin at the end here is that black can block with the queen, the knight, and the bishop. But unfortunately, they're not able to coordinate. They all block on separate squares, d7, e7, and f7. So after white captures those pieces, it will simply be checkmate with the two rooks. An earlier example that might have inspired Popov is this one, from the game Bernstein versus Kotov. Now, Kotov, playing black here, is famous for his book Think Like a Grandmaster, which teaches us how to calculate, or at least teaches how Kotov calculated. Unfortunately, in this position, his calculation skills let him down. He probably should have played the move rook to c4 to cut off the c-file. Instead, he played the move rook e takes b4, seemingly a better and more natural move that threatens to capture on b2 and picks up a pawn straight away. The problem is in the details. Pause your videos and see if you can figure out how Bernstein defeated Kotov in this position. Well, he starts with the move rook c to c8. Certainly Kotov didn't miss this move. It threatens an immediate rook h8 mate. But after queen e4, rook h8 check king g6, it looks like black's king is safe on g6. That's not so though. After the move f5 check, white is basically forcing mate. E takes f5 and queen takes h6 check leads to mate after g takes rook g8. The two rooks combine with a little help from the pawn on e5, and we have another beautiful queen takes h6 mating pattern. A very different mating pattern arose in the game Janowski versus Samish. If you're not familiar with Janowski, I'd encourage you to check out Grandmaster Bojkov's excellent video series on his games. Janowski was an absolutely uncompromising attacker. He made many dubious sacrifices throughout his chess career, but his games are always fun to watch. Here, he's gone a little bit crazy. His pieces are in attacking position, but his king is also on e1. Samish decided that he should punish Janowski for leaving his king on e1, and he played the move e5. In principle, this is an excellent move. In terms of tactics, it completely fails. Pause your video and see if you can figure out how Janowski refuted this attempt to get to the king in the middle of the board. Janowski played captures on e5, and after all of the captures on e5, black plays bishop d6. Of course, black intended to sacrifice the pawn and wants simply to put a rook on the e-file very soon, and he hopes that white's king will be in quite a lot of trouble. It looks pretty dangerous, but in this position, queen h6 ends the game on the spot. Another beautiful checkmating move. The first thing is that if g takes h6, the g-file is now open and rook g3 is simply an immediate checkmate with beautiful participation from the two bishops. If black captures on e5, then we have queen h7 mate. White is also threatening mate on g7, so really the only other thing black could try is f6, but Samish decided rightly that queen h7 check would lead to a devastating attack. So after the move queen h6, Samish simply resigned the game. Quite a thunderbolt to hit the board with the queen dropping to an undefended, to an unoccupied square where there are so many captures available to black. Magnus Carlsen versus Sergei Karyakin was not actually the first example of a queen takes h6 brilliancy in World Championship play. This is the match game number 20 from Kasparov versus Karpov. This is one of the most beautiful games that Karpov and Kasparov played in their World Championship matches, and they played many, many beautiful games. This would take at least a full video, maybe two to get through, but we're going to dive into just the final combination. Here, knight takes h6 was the key move, which led to a brilliant attack with many variations, but it's this position that I want to get to. After bishop f5, Kasparov finished the game with queen takes h6 check, queen takes h6, knight f7 check. The sacrifice is actually a sham sacrifice. White is going to win the queen back almost immediately. After king h7, bishop takes f5 check, black has to play queen g6, and then after the bishop captures, white can also win the rook on a8. It might look like the b2 pawn is dangerous over here, but in fact it's not so. The bishop on g6 easily controls the diagonal, and so Karpov resigned basically after the two players got to move 40 and got extra time. However, if we jump back, Kasparov could actually have finished the game faster here. And given that he was such a perfectionist, I imagine that that bothered him as brilliant as the game was. He could have played knight f7 check here, queen takes f7, queen takes h6 check, and after bishop h7, rook takes a8, both of black's bishops are pinned, and black actually has no response to the capture of the bishop on f8. It's made in only a few moves. Either way, this is an incredibly beautiful game that will satisfy you if you choose to study it in countless ways. Our nearly final example is my favorite of the bunch. This is the game Rossolimo versus NN, an unknown player. Rossolimo is an Italian grandmaster, given the title in 1953, and he's possibly most famous for his move queen g6 in a totally different game against the player Reisman. However, in this game against an unknown player, he finds an incredible continuation. This is one of my favorite combinations of all time. The early moves aren't too difficult, but it's the subtleties in later play that'll get you. I encourage you to pause the video and see if you can find the entire continuation to the forced mate. Be sure to pay attention to black's resources, which almost derail white's attack, and see if you can find the especially attractive fifth move in the combination. I'd suggest taking 10 or 15 minutes to solve this to the end. Rossolimo played the move rook takes f5. I imagine most of you saw this, and after e takes f5, queen takes h6. Now black has two choices. The easy choice is g takes h6, knight f6 check, king h8, rook g8, leading to an attractive Arabian mate. It's beautiful, but it's not too difficult. The much more complicated continuation is king takes h6. Now, if you've seen this far, you should be suspicious of the black king's placement. The black king on h6 is obviously exposed, but where's the finishing blow? White starts with rook h1 check, and then after king g6, white plays the beautiful move king f4. Now the king is actually taking up an attacking role because the king will need to cover f5 in some variations. But the main point is that if black plays an irrelevant move, or possibly captures the knight on e4, white has bishop h5 check, king h7, bishop takes f7 check. And we have a beautiful mating pattern here with the rook and bishop combining. Black can only block with the queen on h3, but after it's captured, we have checkmate. However, if you got this far, you really needed to see black's defensive try. The move rook e6 almost completely refutes white's attempt to checkmate. The point is that bishop h5 check now does not lead to checkmate, and in fact it loses the game for white. White has king h7, bishop takes f7 check, but now black has rook h6, and white has basically nothing in return for the queen in this position. Black will win this one easily. The key move after rook e6 is to shift the rook on h1 to h8. Now the black king can escape to the h file, and in fact black has no way to prevent bishop h5. Black might as well capture the knight on e4, and then we get this incredibly beautiful checkmate with the bishop, the rook, and even the king participating. The different mating patterns here and the extensive subtleties in this combination make it one of my favorite of all time, and I hope you like it as much as I do. Our final example is from my own play. I cannot claim that this is as beautiful as the other examples, but I hope you like it as well. This is from a blindfold blitz game I played on chess.com. I played the move g4, which is not necessarily the best move, but it works out well. After hg, fg, black should have probably just played knight takes g4 check. I've already sacrificed material, so this would basically end my attack. And I was down on time, I probably would have lost the game on time. But after I captured on g4, black, fortunately for me, played the most natural move, knight to e7, simply retreating from the pawn's attack. Now, if you want to pause your videos, I think you're going to find this solution pretty quickly. I simply play queen takes h6, our key move, and after king takes h6, we have rook h1 check. King g7 leads to rook h7, and we have the Arabian mate, slightly different positioning, but the same Arabian mate that we just had in Rossalimo versus an unknown player. In king g5, we don't have something quite as subtle as Rossalimo, because here the king gets cut down pretty quickly. I only need to play bishop c1 check, and in this position black can only block with the queen on d2, and then I'll take and it's checkmate. An unusual checkmating pattern where the knight on f6 is holding on to the pawn on g4 and combining well with the bishop and rook. I hope you've enjoyed these examples as much as I've enjoyed presenting them. And if you can think of some other beautiful queen to h6 or possibly queen h3 sacrifices, I'd encourage you to post them in the comments. I certainly didn't cover anywhere near all of them in this video.